Welcome back. We are going straight to the EC headquarters for the press conference that is underway on the outcome of the referendum on the creation of 6 new regions.
Chairperson or not. But I think personally it is a good thing that he did in order not for people to misinterpret the whole issue as if he was giving some people accreditation and others not. Thank you.
There was a question about the high voter turnout in certain places. I think the chairperson made it very clear. When you look at Western North, the turnout was 77.69, Oti 88.33, Ahafo 90.41, Bono East 85.82, Savannah 81.77, Northeast 80.95. I know there are several polling stations in these areas, so we don't think it's unusual for some places to record as high as 95%, whilst others will record maybe 60%, then you find the average. And we should also take into consideration that this election, it was more about identity. People were more enthusiastic about this election because for the first time they were going to get a region. So people showed more enthusiasm towards it. So in terms of the turnout, we are not so much surprised. It was widely expected. Well, we had instances where people who had not even voted for years felt that they had to come. Some came all the way from outside to come and take part. So in terms of the voter turnout as a commission, I think we are well, it's okay. And there was also something about manual verification. The law allows both biometric verification and manual verification. In instances where people cannot go through the biometric verification, they are allowed to use the manual. We've heard it being raised that they thought the manual figures were so high. These are things as a commission we will look into them. But as far as the law is concerned, no law has been violated. Thank you.
I think you should also mention the areas. That they didn't mention the areas. That there are some peculiarities in the north where they need.
Then to add to what the deputy chair said, you know, at times we have problems or challenges with our fingers, and it depends upon the nature of work that we do. And that is the reason why at times we are not verified by the BVD. So if you look at the farming communities, if you look at certain activities, those mechanics and all those, you know, the tendency for them not to be verified by the BVD is high. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that because of the nature of work of some people, it cannot be verified, and there is a tendency for manual verification to be used. That is the explanation. We'll look at those areas which had the high use of manual verification, and then probably try to interrogate and then find out the cause. And this is the explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, let's take the last set of questions, and then the last set of questions. You have your 10 already? Yes, you have your 10 already, so let's take it.
My name is Idi Gire with the Ghana News Agency. My question is, after the referendum, what next?
Any other? Any other? Okay.
My name is Malwani Abama. I want to talk to you. Madam, I would like to know what's your assessment of the entire process? And second, journalists being kicked out by your officers from girls' police.
Journalists?
Restrict by
EC officials.
Security officials.
Security officials.
I don't believe that.
Okay, so I think shall respond to these last two questions and we're done for the day.
Ms. Eddie, after the referendum, I think what is left for us to do is to present our report to the President. and I believe that they would take it from there. Of course, we'll gazette the results as well, and make it, of course, it will be available to the public as well. And the gentleman from Top Radio, I'm not sure of EC staff, restraining journalists from monitoring or from being present at the various polling stations. I mean, this is the first time this is coming to our attention, and we will look into it. And maybe you would have to provide us with a little more detail. Is that the only question you asked?
What's your assessment?
I think it's been a very successful process. I'm sure that you are aware that we have this commission has been in existence for the last 5 months. I think we were sworn into office in August, and we were confronted with this referendum. We've had successful, registration. The online registration process was successful. We had a successful exhibition as well. From what I hear and what I gather on various media platforms, the election started on time. There were no shortages of material. People went to the polls. There was no violence, and generally, I think it was very successful. Of course, there are issues that, as a commission, we continue to engage with you, we will be picking up, and we intend to look into some of these issues and to come out better. But generally, I think that it's been very successful. There has been no hitch. We were monitoring the various radio stations and so on, and voting went on early at 7 a.m. as stated, went on smoothly, and people came out in their numbers to vote. I know there were concerns about security and threats to security and so on, but the fact that there were no injuries, there were no threats to security, I think I can say on behalf of the commission that it's gone on very, very well. Okay? And of course, the voter turnout, I think this has been an issue that has been of concern to many a Ghanaian. And I think we should be hailing this, that people are very much aware of the issues that concern them. They are very interested, they are very engaged. And I think that we should be applauding the people of Ghana for going to the polls and voting in favor of a region that would benefit them. So that's my assessment. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this session, and thank you very much for coming.
All right, so welcome back to Business Live. That was the EC Chair, Madam Jane Mensah, addressing a section of the public, the media, I must say, on the referendum that was carried out yesterday on the creation of 6 new regions in the country. But we've broken all the rules. We want to go straight to our main story for tonight. And Ghana's economic growth is estimated at 7.4% for the third quarter of 2018. Some economists believe this is quite impressive considering the challenges facing the country. For instance, the country continues to rely on borrowing even as government is touting Ghana beyond aid. So in 2019, what are the threats to the country's economy? Karaj Mate is an economist with Data Bank, and he joins me for some answers on the outlook for 2019. Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining me.
Merry Christmas, Sandra. It's a pleasure.
Great. How will you describe the economic year? I mean, 2018, what's your assessment of the year?
Well, it was a shocker, because it turned out to be tighter than we expected. I mean, if you look at how we started the year with the currency performing very well, recording 0.26% appreciation against the dollar, we thought that it could only get better,
right,
only for the external shocks to wreak havoc on the currency, and that transmitted to other sectors of the economy, and that just slowed down optimism, and then we just saw things getting tighter by mid-year when the new tax measures were being implemented and other tax measures were being enforced, and it all got things to be a bit more tighter to the end of the year.
So yes, the indicators are that we are having 7.4%, which some people have said is very good. But again, people are lamenting that that is not really reflecting in their pockets. So going into the 2019, how do we ensure, what should government be doing to ensure that the economic outlook actually reflects in people's pockets?
All right. I think the concern that is not reflecting in people's pocket is valid, but then it also tells us what government should be doing as we go into 2019. Sustainability of growth rates above 7% is what will make it reflect in people's pocket. So that if you grow above 7%, if you grow 8% for 1 year or 1 quarter, and you go back down, then it becomes difficult for businesses to replace their lost capacity and then think of expanding, because it's only when they expand that they employ more hands and pay more bonuses, earn more profits and pay more bonuses, that people feel it in their pocket. So if you grow very well for 1 quarter or 1 year and you don't sustain it, then people won't feel it in their pocket. And that means that as we get into 2019, government should be focused on continuing the good works that they have done under the IMF program and not lose the fiscal discipline and the prudent economic management because we do not have the external constraint. I think we should allow the fiscal reforms that were done under the IMF program to constrain us, tie our hands, and ensure that we are very efficient and continue to record these kinds of growth. Because until we sustain this kind of growth, we will not feel it in our pocket. There are risks. External sector is there to be managed. There's also the risk of what the market will behave like in the absence of the IMF, because you have told them that you are implementing fiscal reforms that you adhere to, but they do not really think that you can be committed to it without an IMF program. So it's up to you to show them that you can be committed to it. You know, so the external sector is there. Post-IMF uncertainty is also there. And these are the kind of risk that we should be mindful of, and that should guide our behavior in terms of policy implementation and formulation.
All right, Courage, another issue has to do with jobs. A lot of people, we saw the launch of NAPCO, which was supposed to create a lot of jobs for the people. But again, most people have said that job doesn't really match the growth that we have in the country. So going again into 2019, how do we ensure that we have a balance in job creation and then the growth that we expected to see?
Absolutely. So which sectors are we growing in? You know, if you are growing in sectors that are not labor intensive, if you are growing in sectors that are a bit more requiring of highly skilled labor, and the majority of the labor force is not up to that level of skill, then you would be growing at the top line numbers, but the real impact of the job will be questionable. So we need to grow in areas that can trickle down, that could use a lot of labor. You know, areas like agriculture, which employs over 40 or nearly 40% of our labor force. And that is very good. If you look at Q4 growth numbers, it appears we are tilting towards that kind of growth. So sustainability is key. Crops, for instance, grew significantly in excess of 6% within the agriculture sector. You go into industry. I mean, take out mining and quarrying subsector. Manufacturing was the next biggest, expansion, recorded the next biggest expansion in the industrial sector. These are the sectors that can throw out sustainable jobs, that can employ a lot more hands. And these are the sectors we need to be growing at or in 2019.
All right, so I'm sure one of the phrases that was commonly used in 2018 was Ghana beyond aid. We've been touting, government have been saying Ghana beyond aid, but we still heavily depend on borrowing. So how do we manage the debt situation of the country, again, going into 2019, to ensure that we don't rely so much on borrowing to be able to achieve this Ghana beyond aid agenda?
Another critical issue, and you are very right to mention it, if we don't deploy our resources efficiently, we would keep relying on aid. Because if you look at the budget, if you look at recurrent expenditure, employee compensation, interest payments, goods and services, statutory allocation, add all of these up, and you are getting close to 110% of our domestic revenue. What it means is that our domestic revenue is still not enough to finance recurrent expenditure. You need to even borrow to support recurrent expenditure, not to talk of capital expenditure. So if you don't find a way of moving resources efficiently, if you don't find ways of mobilizing enough revenue from within to match your expenditure framework or outlay, you will keep relying on it.
Have we been able to do that? And
Until
does it
now,
look like
no.
we are going to do that?
It looks like we are going to do that. Until now, no. I mean, 2016, 2017, 2018, 3 consecutive years, revenue underperformed. But it looks like the signals are good. Towards the end of this year, we saw aggressive push for tax compliance, the tax stamp policy, and all those kind of taxpayer identification number. These are the things that will ensure that we exploit the rebased GDP that we have seen. You know, the GDP is bigger now per the new calculations. But if you don't exploit it to get the revenues from it, you will still be relying on borrowings and donor support.
All right, before I let you go, it's just 4 days to the deadline for the minimum capital requirements, and some banks are yet to meet this requirement. What should the Bank of Ghana be doing? Do you see them extending the deadline for the requirement?
From the very first day until now, they've not given any signal that they are interested or ready to extend the deadline. So for me, I don't expect an extension to the deadline. However, I'm just asking myself, if somebody is in the process already and I've gone maybe 50% of the way, is it possible to grant some waivers? And I would want to accommodate such thoughts that if some of the banks are in the process already and are almost there, but they cannot beat the 31st deadline, probably that can be considered. Otherwise, maybe those other guys who are far off the process could look at going to the lower tier of the banking sector. Always a pleasure having you on a show. That's Courage Mate, who is an economist with Data Bank. And that's how we wrap up tonight on Business Live. I was here with Daryl, and I have to do this to the end alone because of the program. But for more news, do log on to myjoyonline.com/business for business updates. My name is Sandra Essenamapenu. Do have a great weekend.